So today we have to talk about what is going on in the Valorant PvE, because in the PvE there is some new changes that are coming that almost certainly I think will come into the game. For those of you who don't know, basically, on the PvE servers, they make these changes a couple weeks before, and then pretty much always they do come into the game. I think the only reason they wouldn't come into the game is because of, bugs or something like that, need fixing or whatever. So as long as there's no major bugs that go on with these changes that they've made, they probably will be coming into the game. So this is basically a quick look at what is probably coming in the next patch. And we have some interesting things to talk about. The first thing is a little menus update. This obviously will affect everyone who plays the game because they are looking to change the menu. Obviously they brought in the new UI. People weren't too happy with the new UI in general. And so, yeah, they're going to change it so that, again, you'll be able to jump to all the different things with just one click by putting something back at the top. Sounds like a good change. I assume that it will get added and everyone will be, a bit happier that, again, they can just go to every menu with just one click. But then we also have some agent changes as well. The first one we need to talk about here is Fade. Fade's prowlers have been versatile and difficult to play against ability that we're looking to sharpen with these changes. The duration changes encourage Fade to be more deliberate in the areas that she chooses to sweep, while the other tweaks to the ability are meant to help enemies on the counterplay side of things. The Nightfall cost is increasing in price as we found the baseline value of the ultimate to be on the higher end compared to other ultimates in the game. So, the prowlers, the duration is reduced from 3 to 2.5 seconds. So that's the time that it is alive without a trail. The delay on the bite after reaching a target is increased from 0.4 to 0.6 seconds, so that's just giving your opponent a bit more time to react when the prowler is right in their face. There are some hitbox improvements as well, apparently. The near sight duration has been reduced as well from 3.5 to 2.75, and the prowlers now fizzle out and no longer debuff instead of debuffing its target if they teleported away before it's finished its animation. That's a fairly niche scenario, I think, overall. But overall, some pretty fairly substantial nerfs to the prowlers, very much needed, I think. The fact that Fade has 2 prowlers compared to, just Sova's 1 owl drone, I think was the main reason that, Fade was seeing that higher pick rate play over a Sova on a lot of different maps. The Prowlers are an extremely strong ability overall, so just these kind of nerfs I think are good things overall, and I don't think really anyone would disagree. And then the Nightfall goes from 7 to 8. Kind of interesting, they talk about it being a high baseline value ult. I would put it kind of in the middle, to be honest, but I think the agent as a whole has been proven to be pretty powerful, and this is a good way of just kind of, nerfing an agent in a substantial way without going too far. It's like a safe nerf that will have an impact, but won't be anything too crazy either. So a good nerf, I guess, as well. But then the real reason you're all here is because there is some Cypher buffs coming as well. And let me give my opinion on this. So, the changes below are meant to address the predictability of Cypher's trapwire setups as well as the lack of reward for pulling off his ultimate, paired with some quality of life improvements. We hope to open new trapwire setups and mix up known play patterns. Neural Threat is slightly more accessible, and the second Raving Peel should add more pressure on the enemy. Cypher mains get out there. So the trapwire, the maximum length has increased from 1000 to 1500, so it is a 50% increase on the maximum trapwire length. Now this is a change. I don't know how big this change is, and it will probably depend map to map on where you can now place those trapwires. And honestly, at this point in time, I don't know how big of a change this is. It could be pretty big indeed, because as they say, being a Cypher player, if you can have a ton of different setups, that is only going to help you in general. And there might be a lot more setups, available to you now that, you couldn't do before with these, much longer trapwires in general. So there is definitely potential here, and we'll have to just play around with it and see, what trapwires look good, what's a good setup that you can now do that you couldn't do before. Could be very interesting, might not have as much of an impact. We'll have to kind of see. The Neural Theft is also going to reveal enemies twice now. There's a 4-second delay between the 2 reveals. The time restriction has gone, and the maximum cast distance has increased. Overall, this is kind of, it's obviously like a nice buff. I don't think that this is game-changing, and I don't think anyone would think that this is a game-changing, change to Cypher overall, but it is good, right? It's a good change, right? I really like the time restriction and the maximum cast distance being increased as well. You can now, really throw that hat quite a way. That's going to be funny to see. But, you know, also that the time is gone. I think that had to happen. That was such a weird thing that was part of the ult. And, you know, you also now get the 2 pings as well. Obviously, this isn't making the Neural Theft like a game-changing, game-breaking ult, but it is better than it was, and you'll have probably, you know, more chances to use it than you did before, so that's good. Quality of life. Updated the yellow silhouettes for Cypher's reveal on the Spike and Neural Theft. It now disappears, the silhouette, if a revealed enemy becomes visible to you. It now starts dimmer and fades faster to make it more distinguishable from an actual enemy. But then the big one is the one at the bottom. Cypher's placed utility is no longer destroyed by allies' AoE damage. That is a massive thing, particularly in ranked, because your Raze or whoever, right, would just throw in a nade on your trip, it would get destroyed, your camera would get destroyed as well, and you'd just be left with no util, and all of your setup is gone because your teammate is an idiot. You know, that was very, very frustrating, and I'm super, super glad they took that out. Really, really a big change to make sure that your allies aren't just destroying your setups. So that is a very, very good thing. But then if we look at the reaction of most people to this Cypher change, particularly a lot of pro players, here's Nats, for example, obviously perhaps the most famous Cypher player. It feels like nothing changed. Cypher, anyway, not going to be over Chamber, unluckily, but length of traps is definitely a good buff. And I've seen a lot of pro players mention the word Chamber when they're talking about these Cypher buffs. And to me, that makes absolutely no sense, because these pro players keep talking about, well, Cypher's not going to be better than Chamber, so what was the point in the buff? Well, obviously, I mean, just use, you know, just those couple brain cells that we all collectively have in this Valorant sphere, just for a tiny second, you'll realize that if Cypher were to be buffed to be better than Chamber, then Cypher would need a nerf straight away. So that would be pretty useless to do that, right? That would be not a good thing to make an agent super strong and make him stronger than Chamber. That would be pretty pointless overall. So that is not the goal of this Cypher change. The idea behind this Cypher change is when Chamber, and I do say when Chamber gets a nerf because I'm fairly certain that he will get a nerf in the future. When that does happen, Cypher is now in a much better position, hopefully, to take advantage of whenever that nerf comes, right? And we could talk about this future Chamber nerf as well, because obviously it is kind of a big red flag as, you know, to why it isn't in there, because I think, you know, some people, myself as well, were maybe expecting that a Chamber nerf, an extra Chamber nerf would be coming. And the reason that I say that is because in the State of the Agents back in September, the devs mentioned talking about a Fade nerf. Right, with the addition of Fade, you know, it talks about Fade overperforming, so they're going to explore potential tunings to her utility. Well, now we are getting those tunings to her utility, right? So that was in there. But they also mentioned Chamber overtaking the Sentinel role, and, you know, the results in the competitive and watch championship, there's still work to be done here and will continue for a focus for us moving forward. So I think, you know, there was kind of a suggestion that both Fade and Chamber would be getting nerfs. And obviously we've seen the Fade nerfs, but the Chamber nerf isn't there yet. And I think one of the important things is, and I've mentioned this on our channel before, the way that Chamber needs to be nerfed is that initial teleport away. Much like it was for Jet, you know, we kind of played the same thing out with Jet long ago, where everything else on Jet's kit got nerfed, and then eventually they decided to nerf the dash, and then Jet was fixed. I think that the same thing is going to happen with Chamber, where everything else has been nerfed at this point in Chamber's kit, and now eventually we're going to hit that first TP away, that first rendezvous away, so that it's not always a get out of jail free card all of the time. And you know, that is going to be kind of the way you fix Chamber. However, you have to remember, when it came to the Jet nerf, they came up with a very creative solution that I don't think I heard anyone at the time mention, right? No one was saying that they should nerf Jet in that way. No one else had, or at least I didn't hear people, you know, talking about, oh, wouldn't it be good if there was a time window where you could dash instead? So they had to get a bit creative with the Jet nerf, right? It was a bit of a rework of the ability. I wouldn't be surprised if the same was true for Chamber, where this isn't just going to be a simple numbers nerf or buff to Chamber. They're going to have to come up with a way of slightly reworking that ability to keep the core, you know, part of the agent still there, but, you know, severely kind of reduce the overall power of that ability and, you know, make it kind of, you know, a bit more susceptible to being, you know, not used in such a powerful way all of the time, much like Jet's dash is right now. So in conclusion, I would say the Fade nerf seems pretty good, seems pretty reasonable. The Cypher changes as well, obviously we'll have to see with the Trapwire's length increasing, which is just another thing why it's kind of bizarre to talk about this Cypher buff, you know, and not being enough, because you don't know all the setups that are now possible with all these different traps. There could be some super OP ones, right? You just don't know. So we'll have to see on that. But you know, I think it will probably end up being pretty good, and Cypher will become like a solid like B tier agent after these changes, in my opinion, which is a good thing. Am I disappointed there isn't a chamber enough to go along with it? Yes. Do I understand that, you know, there probably will be one coming in the future, and it might take them a bit longer to figure out a clean solution to chamber and how to nerf his rendezvous? Again, yeah, overall pretty happy. We'll have to just wait and see, though, for any chamber changes upcoming.